Real Estate Rewired.
Welcome to Real Estate Rewired with Gus Waite, AI with a heart. This is a show where I talk to real estate professionals about what they love about this business, what's working, what's not working, where tech is going, are you using AI, where is it still fun, and how can technology actually give you the opportunity to increase doing what you love. And today I'm here with Michael, who has a Lifetime Achievement Award, a negotiating award, and you were in this business for 50 years. Is that correct?
Yes, at the time we're recording this, I'm 2 weeks away from having completed 50 years. It sounds like a prison sentence, doesn't it? But actually, it's been a lot more fun.
Absolutely. So tell me, what was the genesis? How did you get into this? What did you love about it? What matched for you?
Well, I like to tell people, Gus, that I started when I was 3, but it wasn't quite true. I was 16, but and I wanted to get out of school. I've got to be perfectly honest. I've got a few exams, but I just really wasn't into the whole academic thing at the time, and I wanted to get out in the real world. And bluntly stumbled upon an opportunity in a local estate agency operation that not only gave me the chance to get out and start working, but also gave me, we called it day release. It was 1 day a week at college. So I was able to go on and do my professional qualifications whilst I was working. And that just proved to be a godsend. I took to it. I loved it. I've never looked back.
Wow, interesting. So now we had talked a little bit about your love of music and the fact that you're a musician. So was getting into this line of work in a way enabled you to sort of support that passion that you had?
I think they're mutually supportive. It's quite interesting. I mean, obviously, I know an awful lot of people in the estate agency, real estate world. And the fact is that actually there are elements of showbiz to it. And whether we're all frustrated sort of actors or musicians or whatever it may be, it does seem to lend itself to people who are prepared to put themselves out there, expose themselves to the risk of, maybe not being liked or whatever it may be. And I think music is a fantastic way of expressing yourself, getting stories, feelings, whatever out there, but also hopefully entertaining and bringing a little bit of joy to some people, hopefully along the way.
Interesting. We've shared that I had the acting background, and I often thought, I was doing corporate relocation in New York City. And I often thought that the parallels were, you have to establish emotional intimacy pretty quickly. They're very intense relationships when someone's buying a home. And then they end quickly. And that's kind of like a musical gig, right? Getting together with a bunch of folks and having to establish that rapport.
It's that 3-minute song, isn't it?
Absolutely.
You're absolutely right. I mean, property, it's not about property, really. It's about people. Always has been, always will be. We'll talk about tech and that as we go along, but the reality is it's still people at the heart of everything because they're the people involved in whatever the transaction is. So and music is the same. If it doesn't move somebody, it doesn't do anything.
Right. And if you walk into a home, even if it clicks the checklist of all of the things that they thought they wanted, if it doesn't feel like home, they're not going to move forward.
There's no place like home.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this. What is the difference between, where I'm calling you from the United States. How is real estate practiced in England different than how it's practiced in the United States?
One of the fundamental differences is the fees. And that then underpins everything else because fees in the UK are incredibly low. In the US, in the residential market, often fees are in the sort of 4 to 7% of price type of range. And that enables, obviously, various things to be done within that sort of costs, which can't be done within the money that's being paid in the UK, which has an average fee of about 1%. So it's a huge difference. So the fundamental difference in the US is that you often have an agent, a realtor, acting on both sides of the transaction in so much you have what we would call a buying agent and a selling agent. So somebody lists with the selling agent and then other realtors working personally with a buyer introduce themselves, bring the thing together. That does happen in the UK, but it's fairly uncommon. And part of the reason it's uncommon is there's not enough fees to go round in the transaction to make that a viable model. What we are seeing, though, is a movement towards the one-man band, one-woman band operator, the sort of under an umbrella. So Keller Williams, EXP, these organisations that obviously came out of America in the first place, are now getting a hold in the UK and building up a network of individual realtors, estate agents, whatever title you want to give them here. They don't do huge volumes as an individual, but then they don't need to because they've got a very low cost base. It's just a person working usually from home. And they would sell themselves very much on a personal service rather than a huge brand identity and marketing clout that is still the traditional model here in the UK.
So how would then a listing agent sort of differentiate themselves from all of the other listing agents? And now, is that 1% fee? So in the US, you can't set a standard fee, right? It's all negotiable. So is that the same in England?
Very much so, which, yeah, I mean, not all agents charge 1%. So, it probably ranges between 0.5% and 2% would be the sort of average fee. But the UK average is closer now to 1%. Basically, there's been a bit of a race to the bottom, competition, et cetera, et cetera. So that's been the problem. What you have here in the UK, the listing agent and the selling agent, are one and the same. So the listing agent markets the property, lists it, markets it, finds the buyer, and then sees the transaction through. So there isn't usually another agent involved in the transaction. It's one person or certainly one company that does the whole thing.
Got it. So they're basically acting as the agent for both parties, both the buyer and the seller.
Yep, they have a duty of care to both. They have a legal obligation to the seller because that's the client. 99 times out of 100, it would be the seller that's paying the fee. So they have obviously their ultimate duty to the client who's paying, but they have a duty of care and some legal requirements to make sure that they look after the buyer along that journey.
Right. Got it. So how do the estate agents differentiate themselves or market themselves, or the ones that are very successful, let's say, that are doing a lot of transactions? How do they differentiate themselves traditionally?
That of course is key to the whole thing, because you have to win the instruction in the first place. You have to win the listing, otherwise you've got no business. It's not like being a supermarket, and if you're running out of beans, you phone the warehouse and say, send me some more beans, please. You have to win the instruction. So differentiation is key. And the biggest problem, or the biggest issue for listing agents out there, is that they're not very good at differentiating themselves, which is why they all look the same. They all advertise in the same way. Apart from the name or the colour of the logo, very little to differentiate. And that's why the fees have been heading, or it's a factor in why fees have been heading south. The people who are really successful have cracked that differentiation thing, either through personal delivery, a personal brand type approach, which is what's happening with the umbrella brands, the EXPs and whatever, where you've got Mr. or Mrs. whoever in their town and they become the mayor of that town. You've got that type of approach, or quite simply through very good marketing and reach, which tends to be the route that the bigger players go down, because it's cost effective for them to spend that money across a wide platform and network.
Got it. So, Michael, I neglected in the beginning, but I think it would be good for the viewers. Just give me the bullet points, because you've had your hands in so many areas of real estate, and you've done a lot of things. So maybe just the bullet points of kind of where you started and what your focus is right now in terms of moving the ball forward.
Well, I started as very much a trainee, an apprentice, really, learning the ropes. So I was, making the tea and I was going to say photocopying, but actually the photocopier didn't exist. We had a Gus printing machine with ink, and you used to have to turn a handle and get covered in ink to print material for people, collateral for people. And I did that for a few years whilst I got qualified, and I became a qualified surveyor when I was 21. And then I moved up through the ranks into managing an office, and then ultimately to being a director, partner and a director in a firm in the early 1980s. We sold that business to the Prudential. But the Prudential came in as part of a wave of corporate players into the marketplace in the late 1980s, who saw it as a route to sell financial services and put their arms around customers and offer a lifetime of service. I became the regional MD of the Prudential. They exited the market in 91, and I joined a company called Connells. Connells are now the largest UK estate agency group. They've got over 1,000 offices. I was a main board director there. I was there for 12 years. And then for the last 22 years now, I've been running my own business. And I'm basically an advisor, a consultant. I'm the guy who comes along, takes the wash off your wrist, and then tells you the time. But I work with mainly SMEs, mainly smaller people, providing them with a whole range of sort of mentoring, sort of business advice type services, but also a lot of training and compliance stuff. And along that journey, I've also been a director of a conveyancing operation, which is the law side of things, and also a couple of prop tech companies where we built up sort of software platforms. In all those cases, actually, we sold those businesses subsequently. So I've been through the whole journey. It's been an interesting time.
No, it sounds great. I do have one quick question though. So one of the issues that came up here in the States is any property tech that is owned by private equity is subject to acquisition by Zillow, right? So you had a situation where follow-up was
or CoStar.
What's that? Or CoStar.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, you had a situation where Follow Up Boss was a platform that was marketed to real estate agents here. What a great system. It follows up automatically, drip marketing. Wow, this is great. I don't have to send out newsletters anymore. Zillow comes along and buys them and changes the little clause in one of the contracts. Says, hey, guess what? Now these are our clients. The data is no longer exclusively yours because they filled out a form on Zillow 10 years ago. And so has that issue come up on your end with who owns the data?
Not so much with the data, and I'll explain why in just a second. We have obviously a similar sort of thing here. So I mentioned CoStar. We sold our letting software business to On the Market. On the Market is one of the three main marketing portals here. We have Rightmove, Zoopla, and On the Market. On the Market is now wholly owned by CoStar. And it remains to be seen. I'm no longer involved. As that acquisition meant they bought out my shareholding, so I have no involvement. But it'll be interesting to see where that goes. The biggest player in the UK in the portal market, which is the sort of the aggregated site where everybody lists their properties, is Rightmove. And I was a director at Connells when we were one of the founders of Rightmove in 2000. So we were one of the early investors and adopters. That was a £10 million startup in 2000. It's now, I think, got a stock market valuation of around about $4.5 billion. So our 11% wasn't a bad investment at the time. Now, in terms of the data, of course, that's what these organisations are. They're data collectors. And it's going to be very interesting going forward. And they already use this data in many ways. But at the moment in the UK, most individual consumers start their journey on one of these portals, so Rightmove, and then they go and see a property or whatever, and they find their way to the agent. So the agent captures that data independently. It doesn't stay with Rightmove. Rightmove might have it as well, but they haven't got it exclusively. So we haven't got that. We also have some data protection regulation
Right.
here called General Data Protection Regulation,
Yeah.
which I appreciate. There is data protection regulation all around the world. In the UK, it's fairly tight on who can do what with whom and when. So that ownership of data issue isn't quite as extreme as you're outlining, but there's no doubt it's there. The Rightmove and the other portals have put themselves at the front end of the funnel. They're capturing the initial, and then they're charging people an awful lot of money to pass it through. If you think about it, the agent has worked really hard to win the listing, which is the inventory, of course, that Rightmove needs, because if they didn't have any properties on their site, nobody would go to it. So the agent's done that, and then Rightmove charged them a fortune to get it back, basically. But that's called business.
Right. Got it. Interesting. I mean, the devil's always in the details. And then later on in the conversation, this is sort of where I want to get to, because there's all this tech world, but at the end of the day, it's a human being walking into a home, meeting another human being, deciding whether or not this particular home answers their emotional, financial, familial, societal. I mean, it's really interesting to me. People's homes are a reflection of their inner view of themselves.
I must have a dusty old mind.
Okay, well. So listen, this is fascinating. So listen, right now, what would you say is the single biggest non-negotiable change or shift in mindset you're urging your 1,500 plus agency clients to adopt in 2026? What do they have to be thinking?
Well, they need to be carrying on with what I would call the traditional people part of the business. Now, their methods of distribution, their methods of reaching people and what is where it's largely changing. So we've been through the seismic change of the arrival of the internet 30 years ago and whatever, and we're now obviously moving into more of an AI environment. I think AI searching and whatever is will be starting to come much more to the fore. But in the UK, largely it is still what we call a cottage industry. It's a localized business. Connells are the largest, my old firm are the largest player in the UK market, but they operate under 86 different brands. And so in one town in the north of England, the name Connells wouldn't mean a thing. It'll be another brand. And in another town somewhere else. And that's because these brands are historic. They've been kicking around for 20, 50, 100 years. So there are no really major national brand names here. So it still comes down to what happens on the ground virtually at the local level. Now, those people that are embracing technology to let them do the heavy lifting, to give them the reach, social media is playing an increasing part in this, because people are using social media as much as a marketing channel as anything else these days. But you've still got to have a conversation with people. Or an AI agent has got to have a conversation with people.
Right.
So somebody's got to have a conversation with people, because it's never what somebody wants. It's why they want it.
Right.
So somebody will say they want a 3-bedroom house, but actually they buy a 2-bedroom house. But this house had another room that they can use as a home office or something. Well, it's that understanding that you have to have in order to be able to put people together and do a deal, do a transaction for people.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this, and it's interesting because of the the restrictive or more restrictive laws around data protection in Europe, and that happened a lot with my corporate clients, right? In terms of the speed to lead, the client reactivation campaigns, and the drip marketing on the back end, how does that factor in, or how does that come up against the laws that are that are written currently in the UK?
It's not too much of a problem. Okay. And the reason it's not too much of a problem, without boring you about GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, there are 6 lawful reasons that any organisation, can hold and use personal data. 4 of those are relevant. One is consent. Somebody says, here you are, have my personal data, please use it to do whatever it is. So that's fine, that's straightforward. Another is contractual. So we have a contract between us to do something. So we've got obviously shared I've got personal data in order to fulfill that contract. Legislation. So I need to have your personal data in order to fulfill the legislative requirements. And then the 4th one is a thing called legitimate interest, which is often seen as the get out of jail card, because what it means is, if I've got your details, if I've got your personal data, I'm an estate agent, you're a potential buyer or seller or whatever, it's therefore legitimate for me to want to bring that to your attention. So, hello, Gus, I know we spoke, 3 years ago, but you've been, living in your property now for 3 years. Are you thinking of moving again? Because I've just got some great properties on the market that might be of interest to you. That is a legitimate use of your data. You can tell me to Foxtrot Oscar, you can tell me to remove you from my data set and whatever, and I have to comply with that. But there's nothing to stop me doing that follow through. Biggest issue is agents don't do it.
Yes, 100%. And Michael, let me ask you a question, because this is what I've experienced in talking to a lot of people. There's been new tech introduced since we've been in this. 50 years ago, there was starting to be new tech introduced. Sure. New tech being introduced and agents actually using it are 2 different things.
Very much so. We're all familiar with, Microsoft's Office products, Excel,
right, of course.
Word, and all these sort of things, and Apple's equivalents, mainly Microsoft. Now, I should think, I use Excel spreadsheets, so I'm not a dinosaur, but I still use Excel spreadsheets for certain purposes. I should think I use about 2% of the capability of an Excel spreadsheet. It does what I want it to do and whatever. I haven't bothered to find out about the other 98%, and I might be missing a trick, but that's the way it is. And it's the same generally with all software. So I've got clients who spend a fortune putting in some new CRM system, some new software system. And of course, at the time they do it, they all get trained by the providers of the software. And they're probably at 90% capability of using that system. Then time rolls on and somebody leaves. And that person is replaced by somebody who is then trained by somebody who was only 90% up to speed in the first place. And the old diminishing returns sort of cuts in. And by the time you're 2 years down the journey, they're using half the system. Plus the fact the system's been updated, but they haven't kept pace with the updates. I shouldn't think there's an agent in the UK not using software, but I shouldn't think there's an agent using it well.
Well, and that's an interesting point, right? Because listen, the sales funnel is never changed, right? You got to get people in the front door, you got to get them to touch you, and then the question is, how quickly are you responding to them? And then of course, how are you managing those communications? You're out showing an apartment, they call, you don't pick up. You all of a sudden you're busy, you're sick, you're playing some music, you call them the next day, they found somebody else. So that sort of messy process. Have you seen any agents that you're working with that are utilizing a system really, really well, where the vast majority of that is automated and usable?
I have agents who are extremely successful and use it well. Either because they've got well-trained staff and their focus is on things that are going to make a difference. We have an expression here, DISH, D-I-S-H, does it sell houses? And so these people are focused only on activities that are going to lead them to the holy grail. Whereas a lot of people spend half their day doing all sorts of things, but actually have achieved nothing through it. in terms of the actual technology doing it, we've obviously got some of the systems where you certainly sending material out to people has been around for a long time. So you can hit an awful lot of people by dropping something in their inbox and waiting for a reaction. In a proactive sense, we're only in the UK beginning to see greater use of sort of AI agents for things, and that type of more where it can be used more proactively. We've certainly got, because the portals have such marketing clout and they're reaching the audience, the customer, the consumer who is looking to buy, contacts the estate agent much later than they did 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. 30 years ago, if I was interested in a house in a particular town, the chances are I had to buy the local newspaper or take a journey into that town, walk down the high street, go in and say hello to the agents, introduce myself to find anything out. I don't need to do that now. And so I can actually see all the properties that are available without even letting the agent who's marketing it know that I exist, because I can do that all anonymously on the portals. So the key there is taking that and turning that into a real person, somebody that you can actually communicate with. Because it's a bit like, we're talking music, sort of streaming. I don't know I know how many people are streaming my songs. I haven't got a clue, unless they give me their name. I haven't got a clue who they are. It's the same for estate agents. So a lot of the AI developments is about identifying people who are most likely to move and finding those people. We all know that people move home or buy homes or whatever, or rent homes. Often when there's a life event that's happening, they're getting married, they're getting divorced, they're having kiddies, they're getting a job move, all of this sort of stuff. Well, by taking all of that data from lots of different sources, you can better identify the people who are more likely, the people who are more likely to transact. That's where the game-changing stuff is beginning to happen. But we're probably behind, we usually are on this thing, we're probably behind the US on this, by a couple of years or so.
Now, are you saying that there's firms that are creating that predictive analytics software themselves, or are they purchasing it from a third party?
They're purchasing it. There are one or two, providers that are, supply CRM type providers who are developing that market. I think we will see, we haven't seen it yet, but I think we will see the Rightmoves and the Zooplas and the big portals. We know that something's going on in the background, but they haven't, yet sort of, told us what it is. Same with AI search and this sort of thing. I mean, it's happening, but it's not in day-to-day use here yet.
Right. And, it's interesting because at the end of the day, Michael, and, they've gone to the point now where with the advent of AI agents, once I'm no longer going on and looking for a home and I'm just telling my bot that I've created, my GPT, find Gus's new home, and it's going out and not only identifying the homes, it's now starting a conversation with the real estate who may have his own bot that's answering those questions. So as we get further and further along this world where there's more and more, less and less human to human connection, I think there are going to be agents who master this game, who will position themselves as the go-to listing agent in Kensington or wherever that neighborhood may be. And so here's the question I have for you. This can be overwhelming, right? I mean, you're out there, you've got a life, you've got kids, you're trying to go out there and get someone to list their home with you. You're showing homes, you're trying to exercise, you want to go watch a little music once in a while, you're trying to lose 10 pounds. I mean, there's a life. And now all you're hearing is AI, AI, AI. Your Instagram feed, once you start going down that rabbit hole, I mean, there's 8,000 ads about here's the latest thing. How do you advise people on how to sort of cut through the noise and identify the core, what they should be doing?
I think fundamental starting point is, because there is all this sort of stuff, and you have, as with all some people want the latest iPhone, don't they? They don't know why they want the latest iPhone. They don't really know what it is, but it's model 18 or whatever it is now. But that's the one they want. And so you've got some players in the market always want the latest toy, the latest tool. You've got others who are miles behind and go, "What the hell was that?" You've got, and the majority is somewhere in the middle. The key, of course, is identifying what it is you're trying to achieve. What is what's the plan? Because a man, it's the old phrase, a man going nowhere usually gets there. And the frightening thing about business, is that's the majority of the agents. They're small businesses. They've had no business training. They're not IT technicians. They're not, they're just, human beings trying to earn a living doing what they do. So it's very difficult, but the amount of, I would say, we've got 25,000 estate agents, businesses in the UK, give or take. I would doubt if 3,000 to 4,000 of only 3,000 to 4,000 of them have a business plan for next year. So 80% of them are going to turn up on January the 1st and go, "Well, I wonder what this year is going to be like." And the other 20% are already ahead of them. And it's the same with and tech, AI, and all this falls into that category. It should be part of their plan. But they never take the time, or I'm generalizing, 20% do, but 80% never sit down. They just go, "Oh, did we bank more money than we did last year? Oh, that's okay then." But they have no real concept of almost how they did it, and how they're going to do it in the future. They don't see what's coming around to bite them on the backside or whatever. It's frightening.
Well, listen, one of my favorite quotes is the Carl Jung quote: "If you don't make the unconscious conscious, it will dictate your actions and you'll call it fate." And what I'm seeing, and this tagline came to me as I was thinking about why I got involved in AI. AI can turn what you love into a superpower and take what you hate off your plate. But first, I think part of the challenge is many people just stop at more. Okay, I'm in business to do more, to get more money. And there's never really a backing up to go, well, what's the purpose of that? How do I actually want to live my life? Do I want to have time to go and play music? What is the purpose of what I'm doing? Am I just on this relentless unconscious treadmill of anxiety and trying a lot of different things and being completely scattered, as opposed to even taking a step further back and going, how do I want my business to support me doing more of what I love and less of what I really don't enjoy?
Which is, it's the old sort of, what's your why? What is your why?
Yes.
So, I mean, it's, there's been lots of really good books and things on, not specifically on AI, but around that sort of topic. And it's very, very true. In the UK, we still have this sort of, the vast majority of agents have an office or a shop in a high street, in a shopping sort of area in a town. And that's been their sort of, visual sort of window to the world, basically, certainly before the internet. And they're running a successful business. So what do? They say, we'll open another one. And they go to another town and they open another one. They don't even do any research to see whether they're halving the market size for their existing one. They're just, the ego gets in, we'll open another office. And I've got more offices than you've got. And, it's that sort of, my dad's bigger than your dad type of approach. And what really, it's that lack of business thinking, actually. There's some really good estate agents, but they're not really necessarily good business people. There's a difference.
Yeah, and it's also interesting to me if one first identifies, there's a lot of different ways you can spend your time, I'm sure, as an estate agent, right? What are the things that I love doing that generate income? And what are the things, because we all know, oh boy, I should really be doing this, this, and this, but I don't do it because I don't really like doing it.
Yeah.
And I think what's going to happen is those agents that really identify what it is they love about what they're doing, what they're really good at, and using AI to get more of those opportunities, then it becomes a loop where it's like, I'm not learning this new tool because I have to. Wow, this new tool is actually increasing joy in my life because I'm doing more of what I love to do. And I'm either hiring someone or the AI is doing all of that back of the house stuff that I don't like. And maybe that's tech. And ironically enough, AI adoption is one of the things that will allow you to have to deal with tech less, which I find is fascinating.
That's a great way of looking at it. And I think that, you talk about the joy of, I mean, at the end of the day, these people are working, 8-10 hours a day or something or whatever. And, I wouldn't accuse many of people I know in the industry of not working hard.
Right, of course.
They're working their butts off. How effective they all are is another question, of course. There's efficiency and there's effectiveness, and you need to be both. And I think it's interesting how the tech companies here in the UK sell this stuff to people, because every piece of software now has AI next to it, even if it's not really AI, just it's the sort of buzz phrase. Oh, let's put the words AI in the strapline or something, and people will have it. It'll show that we're right up there and modern and forward thinking and whatever. But there's not enough about people saying, why are we doing this? So that we can concentrate on the things that we enjoy, which tend to be the things that actually people are good at. Because if you're good at something, you tend to enjoy it more than if you're not very good at something. Now, some people who aren't very good at things put a lot of effort into getting better, which is fine. That's growing and developing and whatever. But let's face it, we all like doing the things that we can do well and get, see some really positive outcomes from. That's not actually how the tech is sold in the UK as well as it could be. There's a lot of talk about how it can save you money. We will sack half your team because you're going to need less people or something.
Right.
Okay, that might be a viable business part of the proposition. We'll get you more leads, which will give you the opportunity. But the language around it is very much that. It's either feeding more in the funnel or cutting costs. Not so much talking about the sort of the actual real bit in the middle. So that's an interesting sort of angle.
Yeah, and I think that it's easy to get into the tech overwhelm. And, like I said, what I'm seeing is this isn't going to go away, and it's actually going to keep speeding up. So then the other part of this, it's not like, okay, Excel spreadsheets, oh, this is great. And I mean, have Excel spreadsheets changed in 20 years? Not really, right? I mean, it's pretty much right? But AI and the rapidity of it. And I mean, even to the degree now where, people used to do that quote unquote drip marketing campaign when their current database. Well, now the AI is going in and, doing research on their LinkedIn profile, on their website, on anywhere they were mentioned on social media, on the emails that you've written. And now that email is going out in a way that's personalized to each person, as opposed to just your generic newsletter.
Yep.
Then on the other hand, how do you do that so it doesn't sound creepy? Right?
Well, you've got that sort of a one sort of Big Brother is watching you sort of thing or whatever. But I think that the thing for most agents, they are such small businesses here in the UK. Okay, and therefore they see the investment in this as being well beyond them, which is why 95% of them are using the same or almost identical software or whatever in their businesses, because they're all buying it off the shelf. They're buying their clothes off the shelf. They're not going to Savile Row and having a student need for them. They're actually buying one from Marks and Spencer's that anybody else, in fact, half the other agents in the town are wearing the same suit. So, and that comes back to, unless you're, running a successful business and getting a decent fee, if you're scrapping around, but, you see this investment as being beyond you, quite frankly. So it'll be interesting to see I mean, I'm sure on certain things the costs will be driven down by AI itself anyway. But and we will see the big players either doing their own thing, or the portals and these big players, the big software companies, providing an off-the-shelf one. But then, of course, everybody's the same. So,
Right, exactly.
90% of estate agents advertise on Rightmove. Now, when we started Rightmove, because I was there, literally on day one with Connells back in 2000, that was a huge differentiator for us. Suddenly, you're thinking of selling, and I'm able to put your property on this thing called the World Wide Web, and suddenly reach all these people that we didn't even know existed. Wow, fantastic! Now 90% of people are doing that on Rightmove, and agents are still spending a fortune in telling people, "Oh, we advertise your property on Rightmove," as if it makes them stand out from the crowd. Nope.
Yep, interesting. Oh gosh, I had a thought and it escaped me, but it will. Oh, this was a thought I had. Age.
Mhm.
Do you think that, let's say, an estate owner is of our generation, let's just put it that way, the generation that had the greatest music in the history of the world, can sometimes be reticent to talk with someone who's a lot younger about tech because secretly they feel inadequate, stupid, not up to speed. I don't know what the hell they're talking about. I don't understand this language, embarrassed. Do you think that's a factor in adoption for people?
That's a human sort of reaction to things, isn't it? And change and so does that happen? I'm sure it does. I couldn't sit here and say that 31.7% of people feel that way or something, but it's
right.
There is undoubtedly that. I don't know what it is. Therefore, I'll wait until everybody else is doing it, and then I'll buy it off the shelf and do that. So you have got an element of that. We saw that when Rightmove came along, because initially there was 4-5 companies owned Rightmove, and we were the ones. But now 90% of the market is on Rightmove. So it took a period of time to build up that sort of adoption. So yeah, you've got a number of factors. It's going to be too expensive, but they haven't even found out what it's going to be. They've heard about it, but they've not done that planning, that investigation, and whatever else. I think if I was running a frontline agency, I would be setting out. I'd have mapped out what I wanted my business to look like, what I wanted to do, and then I'd find a way of using whatever might be available or creating whatever might be available to do that. Now, if I couldn't afford that, I'd then find another way of doing it by collaborating with other people and creating something and doing it that way. Most people aren't doing that critical. As I said, they're not doing that critical thinking in the first place, and therefore there's a herd mentality. But, and they'll go with the herd. So AI is moving incredibly quickly, but the adoption within estate agency will be a lot slower than it is in other industries.
Absolutely. And have you heard the term AI slop?
No.
So what it refers to, and it's interesting because before we get off, I want you to let people know about the piece of music you just created and the fundraising. Let's do that right now so I don't forget.
Okay. As we discussed before, I'm a sort of a musician, in my sort of, I would call it a second career, but it's my spare time really. And I have this year for two charities, for Diabetes UK and for the Property Mark Trust, where I'm a director and a trustee, brought out a Christmas single. Everybody loves a Christmas single, I hope, and brought out a Christmas single which people can access. It's on the streaming channels, but the place that people need to go into is Bandcamp, because Bandcamp, you can donate there, you can download it. There's also a YouTube video, which a friend of mine put together, Toby Martin, an AI animated video, which not perfect, but it's damn good. And it's the sort of thing that would have blown MTV away 20 years ago. But it's now great. And we're raising, hopefully, some good awareness and, hopefully some decent funds for the two charities. And, but having a laugh and a bit of fun along the way.
Sounds great. And the reason that it popped into my head that I wanted to be sure to say that, and this is not connected to it, but because it was AI generated, the term AI slop refers to the fact that as these platforms get better at text to video, text to music, make me a song, write me this, write me that, there's going to be a tremendous amount of quote unquote AI generated video, music. I just saw a thing on TV last night. There's the first AI actress that is now being hired. And so AI slop refers to the fact that at a certain point, how are you going to differentiate? I mean, it just becomes an overwhelming amount of slop being thrown into your feed. And the reason that I bring this up is we go back to, at the end of the day, they want to know, wow, I like this guy, Michael. Mm-hmm. He really knows about this neighborhood or this type of property or he has access to these types of people. And how does Michael differentiate himself from the AI slop, from the noise, and stay informed of what new tools are coming along and at what point to adopt them? Because I think that's the other issue, Michael. What happens when an AI voice agent is met with racist language on the other end or starts getting screamed at? What is that AI agent going to respond? Mm-hmm. How is it going to respond? And if it responds in a negative way, that, for instance, in the United States goes against fair housing issues, am I, as the agent, now responsible for what that particular bot said to that customer? And does that go viral? So there's also dangers in all of this, where if you kind of adopt a little bit too early, you're the guinea pig for, I didn't realize that could go wrong, but not waiting so long that every other agent is doing that. Would that be sort of a fair assessment?
I think that's a very fair approach. There's we've had obviously for some time now sort of telephone recording and whatever. So somebody phones into an agent and the agent speaks to them, and there's a recording of that telephone conversation, mm-hmm. so that if there is any misunderstandings or whatever, right. or somebody wants to go back for clarification, there is a recording. There's a company that here, let's give them a plug. Prospector Pro is a company here in the UK. A guy called John Paul, very experienced, decent estate agent, who's developed this, and it's basically does that, but it's using AI and it trains the operators as it goes mm-hmm. along. So if in the conversation, I'm the agent, you're the potential customer, and you've got a property to sell, and I don't ask you about whether I can come and value your property and talk mm-hmm. to you about it, it will pick that up. And whilst still on the call, it will show mm-hmm. me a message saying, don't forget to say this or whatever. Mm-hmm. And of course, afterwards. So we're starting to see it. And that's being used in a sort of a training type
right.
way for the human being. So it's not a bot, mm-hmm. a bot.
Right.
But the human who is having the conversation with somebody is being trained by an AI agent, or could be along each journey they have, each call they have. That's quite an interesting, it's in its early days, but that is quite an interesting development. I've been quite impressed by that.
Oh yeah, it's interesting because there's something in parallel that's being developed with folks that I'm working with, which is that sales call analyzer, which would be on the call with you.
Yep.
And I mean, this is what's crazy, Michael. It's not there yet, but it will, in the future, be able to read body language. And so it'll pick up nonverbal cues from your potential client saying, "Hey, Gus, shut up. Ask him this question. You're talking too much," or whatever it is. for training
I need to
purposes.
put you in touch with John Paul. Then you need to talk, and because you obviously there's some common ground there.
Absolutely, absolutely. Oh God, Michael, I feel like we could talk all day. I mean, this is this is what I love, right? When I say AI can turn what you love into a superpower, I was a stand-up comedian, an actor, always had a fantasy of having my own talk show, and now I sit all day and I talk to interesting people all over the world, and I'm like, and all of this happens behind the scenes with AI reaching out to folks that would have similar interests and putting me in touch with them. And that's what I love to do. And this has been phenomenal. I mean, I can't tell you how much I appreciate this conversation. Is there anything else?
Absolute pleasure from my point of view, Gus. When you first touched base with me, I think it was probably via LinkedIn and whatever, and I'm thinking, who is this person? Whatever. You got a response from me because I do respond to things, even if it was a slightly questioning sort of response,
right?
What's going on here? Then of course we actually met, and wow, and it's great. So that is a great example of how you can use things to actually get from a position of not knowing somebody to a point where you actually feel very comfortable with somebody and would want to go on and do things with them. So you're living and breathing it. It's great.
Fantastic. Well, Michael, don't hang up, but I do want to say goodbye to our listeners and say thank you so much. Please remember to subscribe to Real Estate Rewired with Gus Waite, or AI with a Heart. And thank you so much. If you're interested in being on the show, reach out to me on LinkedIn or on the DM below. And thanks for joining. If you've got value from today's episode, hit subscribe, leave a comment. I'd love to know what you're thinking. If you're ready to turn what you love into your superpower and take what you hate off your plate, schedule your free AI discovery call. The link is in the description and pinned comment. I'm Gus Waite. Until next time.